Hello, Max here. I'll walk you through the story plot of the 2019 adventure thriller film, The Aeronauts. High up in a balloon, a couple battles the strong wind. Desperate to save the love of his life after casting away all the weight, the man jumps off. This scene haunts aeronaut Amelia Wren, being nervous about flying again in a balloon after more than 2 years. Her sister, Antonia, tries to prevent her from flying, but Amelia stubbornly says she will be okay. 1862. The majority of Londoners are watching the balloon take off. Scientist, James Glacier, participating in the expedition is not much worried about the ominous clouds. Unlike his pal and fellow scientist John True, James is confident of his calculations and he is strongly supported by the gentleman investor of this flight who expects them to make it happen. Despite John's worries, the expedition is set to begin. Amelia arrives late, making a spectacular show, thus boosting the necessary ticket sales that fund their flights. In a very colorful dress on the roof of her coach car, she jumps around the balloon joking and trying to get James to play along. She brought a dog to fly with them, despite James' protests. After a speech about adventure and a promise to set a new record, Amelia let the balloon go before James finished his notes and measurements. The moment they are a bit above the platform, as part of the show, she drops the dog that lands safely thanks to the parachute it carries. While flying, they admire the wonderful view of London and James sees the British Society building with his binoculars, recalling how everything started. 2 years ago, he and John watched from a roof another balloon taking off. Later, James' request for British Society funding a similar expedition is turned down and everybody laughs at him for believing in weather prediction. James' parents are hurt as well because of the insults. Now, Amelia puts warmer clothes on as Hames sends out his first carrier pigeon. As the balloon enters the clouds, both John and Amelia worry about a possible storm. Lightning appears, a strong wind shakes the balloon and the stormy weather proves James' predictions wrong. James hits his head and although it bleeds, Amelia insists that they have to go above the clouds so they get out of the storm. Suddenly, the balloon is shaken hard by the wind and both are pushed out of the basket. They manage to hold on but the wind forced James to fall back inside, while Amelia hangs onto a rope. Since James is not very strong, it is not easy to help her climb back, so he ties himself up the basket and finally manages to bring her back in. Amelia starts throwing sandbags out so the balloon can go higher above the clouds. Now, everything is peaceful, and the sun lights them gently. While tidying up the ropes, they enjoy the unique view of an oriole for the first time. James and Amelia have fun above the clouds, but then, noises come from a city. Excited, James takes notes but Amelia recalls her last flight and her husband's death. Afterwards, Amelia just wanted to stay home, drink a lot, without even taking a bath. 2 years later, Antonia made her get out of this mess and took her to a family party. Amelia didn't have fun there, mostly because no man would approach her, except one. James chatted with her and revealed that he needed her to help him prove that weather can be predicted. Amelia realized that James wasn't invited to the party and she didn't like that he had lied to her. Amelia only agreed to help him when James explained to her that such discoveries are really important for humanity. Antonia tried to persuade Amelia out of it, telling her that the air made her happy due to her husband, not because of the balloon. Now, Amelia comes round and refuses to answer James' questions about her husband. As Amelia takes care of his injury, they see a lot of colorful butterflies flying around them. James is excited because he couldn't imagine that butterflies could fly so high, although John was pretty sure about it. So, his friend is right. Influenced by the special moment, Amelia talks about Pierre's love for beauty and, being touched, she thanks James for not pushing her to talk. She thinks about everything leading them here. Her sister made her change her mind about the trip. So she enters the British Society building, although women are not allowed there, to tell James that she will not fly with him. In the evening, James told his mom the news without saying anything to his father who suffers from amnesia. Still remembering the incoming trip, he gave James a pair of binoculars. On the balloon, James lets Amelia help him with his notes. Gradually going higher and higher, eventually they manage to fly the highest in human history. They thank each other shaking hands and James lets another pigeon with his findings while Amelia tells him to put some warmer clothes on. Realizing that James has no more clothes with him, Amelia wants to land the balloon and protect her friend. James doesn't let her do that, talking about the importance of their endeavor and showing her the impressive starry sky. Amelia recalls that she really can find happiness in flying, not only due to her husband, and she agrees to keep on, as long as she may decide when to stop. James accepts her terms and she casts one more bag of sand. Amelia recollects the night that changed her mind about all this. John came to her voluntarily to make her change her mind about the trip. Showing her James' notes with the nice snowflakes he had drawn, he He admitted that occasionally James made wrong predictions, like tonight that he said it would snow but it didn't. He also found some great truths and, according to John, Amelia was responsible for the progress of science. Later, Amelia went to Pierre's grave to contemplate and made her mind up when it started snowing, which proved James' predictions right. Now, Balloon, Amelia and James are covered with frost. James' pigeon can't fly and the last one is already dead. James starts panicking, since no one will know their location. Amelia prevents him from throwing out things, mentioning that his nose bleeds as a result of hypoxia that affects his brain. Like Pierre, he is putting their life at risk for science, so she slaps him. The fact is that Amelia ripped the seams by pushing the balloon too hard. It was impossible to land the balloon, so, to save Amelia, Pierre jumped off. Apologizing, James agrees it's time to descend. Amelia can't open the gas valve because of the frost. Warning James not to fall asleep, she climbs to the top to manually open the valve. Her frozen fingers make everything really hard, and while trying to keep going she slips and is left hanging upside down. Amelia, not wanting to let her husband's sacrifice go in vain, tries harder with a rope around her waist. As James falls unconscious, she makes it to the top. Unable to push the valve with her elbow, she risks standing up to kick it. Amelia manages to open the valve and she jams her boot to keep it open. Then, she briefly falls unconscious, but wakes up as the balloon begins descending and slips off the edge. Meanwhile, Amelia's family and the British Society are worried since the balloon is not in sight yet as expected. Trying to stay optimistic, they just wait in silence. Amelia is hanging on the rope she had tied to her waist. Swinging the rope a few times, she is back in the basket, trying to wake James up. At first Amelia thinks he died, but after lots of shaking he eventually wakes up. He takes their final readings, only stopping when it starts snowing to catch some snowflake for later analysis. As they wait for the balloon to finish descending, Amelia comes to the conclusion to his sister's question. She wants everything she's lost to have meant something. James confesses he's seen beauty that can't match the book illustrations and Amelia agrees. Suddenly, Amelia notices the snow hovering, which means they're moving at the same speed as it. In other words, the balloon is collapsing. They remove the valve and her shoe and begin throwing stuff out of the basket. It still isn't enough, so James suggests for them to climb onto the balloon hoop, and then cut the ropes to let the basket go too. As the balloon descends very rapidly, Amelia considers sacrificing herself like her husband, but James stops her. They cut the cords and as the silk gets pulled up, the balloon turns into a parachute. Now, descending more gently, the balloon goes through some trees and makes James fall, dragging Amelia too until it finally stops. She briefly falls unconscious and then she rushes to find James, who was looking for her as well. Helping each other stand up, they return home. That day, they must have reached a height of 37,000 feet or 7 miles. They made it to the news and were seen by James' parents. His discoveries prove the existence of atmospheric layers which result in the first weather forecasts and the respect of his peers. After a short break, Amelia and James build a new balloon to go flying again and continue their research. Thanks for watching. Leave a comment or feedback and subscribe for more. Cheers.